Hello world of YouTube! I was requested to do this discography review by WhatUpDo96, and I planned on doing it this week because I saw this band live earlier this past week. If you have seen my vlogs, you know that. But I'm doing the band Korn. They're my second favorite metal band, and as you can see by the top up there, is this part 1 of 2, the 90s. Yes, this is how I'm going to be doing discography reviews of bands with tenure. I'm going to be doing them by the decade. Korn has been around since 1993, and they have a good amount of albums. So I'm like, gonna split them up in stuff. Yeah. They're my second favorite metal band, and to describe my feelings when I saw them live is pretty much astounded, flabbergasted mentally. It was a great show, but I'm not here to talk about the show, I'm here to talk about the career. For those who do not listen to Korn, they were pretty much the founders of the genre known as nu metal. I mean, there were other bands that came out a little after they did that did the same style, but they were the first to really do this sound and do it so well. Now, in the 90s, they have a demo album, an EP, and 4 albums. So, this will be a little bit longer than the second half, but yeah. Let's get started. And the first album they released was the demo album, Niederbayer's Mind, which was released back in 1993. Now, this was a cassette. However, thanks to the magic of YouTube, you can look up the songs on there. I'll leave a playlist in the under thingy to the songs in order. You can listen to it on YouTube. So, yeah. As you can hear, it's very raw. It kind of sounds a little spacey with this song. There are only 4 songs: Predictable, Blind, Daddy, and Alive. Now, 3 of those are on the first album. The 4th song, Alive, does not actually come until Take a Look in the Mirror, which was released in the 2000s. That'll be in part 2. Now, this demo is, like, typical demo. It's very, very raw. The songs aren't completely to their caliber that they are on the albums. However, they're very solid stuff. The Daddy that's on here is as passionately sung as it is on the album, if not a little bit less. I mean, there's really not much I can say. It's demo. The songs kind of give you a taste for what Korn was going for back in the day. A tinge of creepiness with a really heavy sound going on. My favorite out of these demos is probably either Alive or Blind, because Blind is my favorite Korn song. Yeah, not really much I can say. 4 tracks. Check them out under thingy. There's a playlist link. All that good stuff. Yeah. And the first album they released was self-titled, and it was released back in 1994. And this is my favorite Korn album. I know what you're thinking, how is your favorite the first album? Because they really had, like, nothing with this album. Like, this album had some play, but I mean, it was just such a fantastically done album. I love all of the songs. It's got a different sound than the rest of their albums. I mean, they root all of their sound to this album to a certain point. But this is just such a phenomenal opening to a career. I mean, they open with my favorite Korn song. They open their whole career with my favorite Korn song. I know they didn't know that at the time. Yeah, great. The Jonathan sounds so raw. They have a little bit of creepiness that they have in their early career with Chutes and Ladders. And, I mean, they have so much aggression on this album. Like Clown. Such just an aggressive song. And it has probably one of the most passionately sung tracks I've ever heard in Daddy. Now, the speculation as to what the song is about is that, and if it's really about this, I mean, I think it is. The lyrics really lead to that, but Jonathan was raped, or at least inappropriately touched, in a very strong way, by a family friend, and they've never performed the song live, and it's just, it's crazy that he actually wrote a song about it, and it's such a dark song. I mean, I can't really describe the feeling that some could get evoked by that song. I'm not personally deeply invoked. I love the song, but I feel it can really help those because that have had that happen to them, because the content is just along those lines. But yeah, my favorite song on the album is probably Dirty, or not Dirty, but Blind. I don't know why I said Dirty, but Blind is probably my favorite song. It's just, I'd recommend it to anybody who loves heavy music. It's a phenomenal piece of music. And the one thing I'd like to point about this album is that David's drumming is the best. He got really lazy, and this is just his most technical work. I just think that he lost track of his skill, because I mean his drumming on this album is phenomenal. There are points in the later albums where he keeps the technicality, but it's really the best on this album with him, which is kind of sad, but yeah. The second album they released is called Life is Peachy, and that was released back in 1996. And this album follows along the same lines as the first album, the fact that just a lot of just heaviness, but they expand on that. I mean, they also cover a few songs on this album. They cover Lowrider by War. It's a short one. It's a short cover, but it's kind of funny. They have Jonathan on the bagpipes, and it's an interesting little interlude between songs. They also cover Ice Cube's Wicked with Chino Moreno on that track from Deftones, and they do a really good song. They do a really good job with covers. I mean, they make them their own, and they put a really good spin on them. This album continues kind of the dark creepiness on songs like Mr. Rogers, but they also kind of go to more of a silly side on the song Cunts. And it's a funny song. It has a lot of it's just Jonathan swearing, but it's kind of in a funny way. Like, this song is this album is a great follow-up, but I mean, it has a variety of stuff with them. I mean, you have the heaviness that's there. I mean, they open with a song like Twist, and Twist is such a just sporadic, vocally done song with Jonathan just beatboxing. This is the intro of the beatbox. Just the... I mean, it's kind of like Sepultura-ish chants, but done in a kind of a silly way. The instrumentation is still very solid. David is still somewhat technical on the drums. It's not really until around the 2000s it starts to get kind of lazy, but yeah, he lost his game. I talked about that just a couple of seconds ago, but yeah, I love this album. It's a great follow-up. It's got some more silliness while retaining the heavy stuff and the dark stuff. It's very well done. My favorite track is probably Mr. Rogers, although I do really like the Ice Cube cover, because Chino is awesome. Now, the third album they released is called Follow the Leader, which was released in 1998. And this is their big album. This is their black album to me. It gained them a lot of fans. It's just an impeccable piece of work. It's not my favorite Korn album, but it is high up there. It's a phenomenally done album. This is the album of theirs with the most guests on it, excluding the 2007 Untitled because they had to get session people in it. This has the most guests. It has Ice Cube, Fred Durst, and Trey Hardson. I have the track listed down there, as you know. It also has a hidden track, Earache My Eye, which is a cover of a Cheech and Chong song with Cheech on the track. It has the most guests, but it's a huge album. You know, I mean, when you hear It's On, it's going to be a bigger album. It has silence for the first 12 tracks. It's 5 seconds of silence per track. Todd McFarlane did the artwork for the album. The cover, the iconic cover with the kids playing hopscotch on the ledge. Todd McFarlane did the art for that. And it's just, it's a step up for them sound-wise. It's a bigger sound with Dead Bodies Everywhere, Got the Life, BBK, Freak on a Leash, all of these bigger songs. And they root themselves, they get more of the hip-hop roots that were following from the previous album, covering the song Wicked. They go even further with that by having Ice Cube on the album on the song Children of the Corn. They have, All in the Family. I mean, they have more hip-hopness to this album. But it's not like, Limp Bizkit style or anything like that. It's Korn rooting themselves more to the hip-hopness of nu metal. This is their first typical nu metal album. I mean, it's not typical in a sense. It's typical Korn-wise. It's still a solid album. There are a few songs that fall off kilter with me. Justin, Reclaim My Place are kind of just but the rest are very, very, very solid stuff. I don't mind those two songs, but those are two that just jump out at me as kind of But yeah, I recommend this maybe below the first album so you can get their sound, so you can hear how their sound has evolved more. The drums are still solid. The rest of the instrumentation I'm going to leave as just very good, up to a certain point. I mean, Monkey and Head play the guitars very well for not having a lot of technicality. They bring in a lot of distortion. They do it fairly well. Jonathan sounds nuts on some songs like BBK. It's just great stuff. My favorite track in the album is probably Got the Life, or Dead Bodies Everywhere. I really love Dead Bodies Everywhere. Now, the fourth album they released, and the last LP in the 90s, was called Issues, and that was released back in 1999. Now, this album really strays away from their nu metal sound, and they kind of pave a way in a new field. I don't hate this album. It's my least favorite from the 90s, probably, but this is when they start to change their sound up quite a bit. They take from Follow the Leader more than they do their first album. They have songs like Make Me Bad on it, and Somebody Someone, which have more singing than growling, and I don't discourage this album from listeners. I'm just telling you that it's not like their first three albums. Some fans I know have fallen off of the Korn fandom with this album. It has some really well-written stuff. It's just more of just singing, which some people don't like from Korn. It has interesting lyrical content, like Let's Get This Party Started. Having a Korn do a song like this and Wake Up is just kind of like not typical to Korn. Although they do have songs like Falling Away From Me and Somebody Someone, which have lyrical content typical to Korn. Like I said, I don't discourage this album. It does have some really solid stuff. I just understand that why people don't like it. The drums on this album are kind of when David starts to get lazy. Fourth album in, that's kind of bad. It does have some technical stuff, not as technical as the early stuff, but he hasn't completely lost it yet. There's a lot of interludes on this album, more so than I'm used to with Korn, which I don't hate. I just feel it kind of draws away from the album. And there's an intro, which Twist, I guess you can count as an intro, but I don't. It's kind of its own track. Dead is kind of an intro. It's a good intro though. It's not bad. It has the bagpipes, which I love about Korn. I love the bagpipe aspect of Korn. I didn't talk about that in the first three albums, but the bagpipes in Korn are probably my favorite things about Korn, because I love bagpipes, and they make it interesting. But, yeah. It's just kind of It's the meh album of the 90s. It's my least favorite from the 90s. My favorite track is probably either Make Me Bad, Beg For Me, or Let's Get This Party Started. You'll see one of those in the under thingy. You'll know which one my definitive favorite is by the end of this review. If you look in the under thingy, that's where my favorite songs are. So you can make an opinion about the song at least yourself. But yeah. The first EP that they released, and the only one that's really out to the public, is their EP All Mixed Up, which came out in 1999. And this EP features the radio version of Adidas, 2 remixes of songs Good God and one of Got the Life. One each, but a live version of Twist and Cheem mixed together, and this song, Jingle Balls, which is their own version of the popular Christmas hit. Now, I'm not a fan of the remixes. They're kind of meh. The Good God one's too dancey. The God the Life one isn't terrible, but it's weird to hear them ever set with beats that aren't with guitar, or that are with guitar, but they're primarily about the beat. I don't like the radio mix of Adidas, really. It's kind of a meh EP. If you want to get it to hear anything, get it to hear the Twist, She Live, and this, because this is just intense. But it's kind of just, yeah. I don't really have much to say about it. I'm not, you know, big on it. My favorite off of the EP is actually probably the two I said that you should get the album for, just because that's really all I liked on it. So yeah, not much to say there. That's pretty much it for part 1. Click over here or somewhere on the screen to get to part 2. It'll also be linked in the under thingy along with my favorite songs from this part of the part 1. So yeah, time to go to the 2000s with Korn.